articles that caught my attention. And looks like, oh, it's the New York Times. Let me see if I can get this in a private window. If not, I can just talk about it. All right, so this surprised people. I can just talk about it. It turns out that cars contain tracking systems that record everything you do, even if you don't turn on the navigator, and they are sending that to insurance companies who have records of it all, who are adjusting the price of your insurance based on that. Now, there are special insurance companies that offer you a discount if you install a tracking device in your car. I saw that. I was going to do it, but it turned out my car was so old it wasn't compatible with the tracking device. But apparently they're doing it without telling people, and people are getting upset about it. It's an interesting issue. So they know how many times you hard braked, how many times you accelerated, how many times you drove, what time you drove, and things like that. They don't keep track supposedly of exactly where you go. But anyway, apparently this is going on and people don't know about it. So it may possibly be an illegal invasion of privacy, or perhaps it's somewhere in terms of service that you agreed to this. But anyway, it's kind of a big scoop that it's happening and people didn't know about it. So Google has designed a new office which looks pretty screwy. And it turns out, not only does it look strange, it's also completely impractical. Somehow, these roofs are made, I think, of metal plates, and they bounce Wi-Fi signals around in a way that ruin them. So people are finding out they can't get any Wi-Fi at work, and they're having to use Ethernet cables or go outside the building to do their work. So that's pretty bad, and they'll have to fix that. I would assume you could put some large amount of extra access points everywhere to make up for that, but this is if you study antenna theory, which is really quite interesting, antennas have all sorts of extravagant shapes because it's really pretty complicated to figure out how radio will bounce around when it hits an object. So it's understandable that a goofy shape like that might have unexpected consequences for microwaves, which is what Wi-Fi is. So Airbnb has currently allowed indoor security cameras as long as you only put them in public indoor areas and you notify the guests. But this has turned into a huge scandal. Many people are very worried about there being cameras spying on them in their Airbnbs. I've seen a lot of articles about apps and tricks to try to find the cameras. And so they're just going to ban them. Now they say if you put indoor cameras anymore, they're going to kick you off the system or punish you. So probably a good idea. Although, of course, all the studies I saw showed that if you try to detect those indoor cameras, there's really no way to find them. You're very unlikely to find them. So a person could probably hide them, and you'd probably get away with it for quite a while before anybody caught them. All right, let's see if anybody get past the edge to anything. So this is something I haven't heard much about lately. People seem to have sort of forgotten it. This is where AOC first became famous, was pushing for a Green New Deal, and it's worth reminding us that she was right. Almost nothing else matters in politics except the environment. And the guy points out the Earth is now heating much faster than it ever has in its entire history, 4.5 billion years. The greenhouse gases are rising at a rate much faster than they ever have. And the ocean currents are disrupted and the air currents are disrupted. And say, if you understand anything about climate science, you'd be much, much, much more afraid of this. And we probably should all be taking it a whole lot more seriously. It's a good thing to be reminded. Anyway, let me check for comments. Okay. All right. So they made a new optical disc that can store 15,000 times as much as a DVD, which is petabits. The problem is it's slow. So they made this new material is called dye-doped photoresist with aggregation-induced emission luminogens, whatever they are. But the point is it can store a whole lot more data. But there's some reason why it's impractical. To be commercially viable, it will need to the writing speed will need to be improved and made much more energy efficient. So we'll see.
Does the one come out from China?
Well, I'm not sure where it came from. Let's see. It's a team of scientists. They aren't immediately saying who they are. These guys don't seem to tell us where they're from. These scientists, which is kind of screwy for this kind of article.
I saw one similar.
Yeah.
Like 200 petabytes.
Yeah, this might be it. It might be from China. It's kind of, yeah.
The thing is, they use two lasers. One is to write or something, another one to solidify or something.
Right.
To read is also two lasers.
Yeah, well, using two lasers is,
And also they
yeah.
have to do like, have to make up another, let's say like a photoresist to put on top of this.
Yeah. All right.
I
Well,
think they're probably the same one.
yeah, probably is. Yeah. All right. And so here's a government report that they spent 2 years developing, claiming that AI is an extinction level threat to us. And, I think it's worth mentioning since this comes from an authoritative source. I think it's garbage, but who am I? I'm nobody. These guys are the experts.
Problem is the first threat. The AI is probably down the road.
Well, that's the issue, is how far down the road it is. And they've got a statement here. The 3 authors of the paper worked for more than a year, working with more than 200 government employees, experts, and workers at all the frontier AI companies. And they said that most people say we're going to have artificial general intelligence within 5 years. They've been working on it since 2022. Well, I know, but that's the issue, of course. I think that's insane and it's never going to happen. The experts think it's going to happen within 5 years and they're freaking out. So it's hard to tell. Just like cryptocurrency, the problem is the experts have a huge financial incentive to blow it up and make it sound better than it is.
Sure. No, I
And,
just meant
yeah.
that I thought that there have been companies working on AGI from a long time before 2022, because I interviewed with such a company back in like 2016, 2017, something like that.
Well, I know they've been doing AI forever, like my whole life. I mean, I've kept on bouncing across just every
This is
time,
one
but
of
it's
the
been very,
first
very primitive until recently.
Specifically, they were trying to get to AGI.
That's interesting. I never heard of anybody talk about AGI until the last couple of years. But yeah, that's good. So people are talking about it, but I think from where we are to there is a really big leap. But anyway, they're recommending we should limit the speed of AGI development, not let people train models more than a certain number of processing bits per second, and slow everything down in order to prevent the development of AGI and the extinction of the world. But that's never going to happen. Elon Musk couldn't even get a 6-month delay with getting all sorts of people to sign a document. I mean, the fact is, I don't think it could possibly stop unless you had a government pass a real strict regulation, and then it would just happen in another country, and nobody is even remotely close to having the political will to pass that regulation. Because, I mean, look, we won't even stop polluting the air when we know climate change is here, it's real, and there's very far from any proof that any of this AI stuff is real, any of these risks of AI. I think this is why I think the more sensible people I listen to say the thing to worry about AI is the stuff you can already understand, like political disinformation, inaccurate data, bias, things like that, excessive power consumption. It's probably better to just focus on the real problems that you actually know about than to make up science fiction problems that aren't even here and take some huge response to them. Anyway, so apparently, I've heard this periodically throughout my life, if you make a citrus-flavored soda, the citrus oil will just float to the top and it won't be mixed. So to fix that, they use bismuth, I think. Yeah, bismuth or bromine. Brominated vegetable oil. That's what they use, and apparently there are concerns that this stuff is bad for you. It's an emulsifying agent, keeps things mixed, and many other countries have banned it long ago. Now they banned it here, although, from what I could tell glancing through this, like many of these things, the evidence is not incredibly clear. Animal studies have shown it builds up in your fat tissues, but exactly what harm it does and exactly how bad, it's been hard to convince them. So anyway, apparently they've now finally banned it. So
What is brominated?
bromine is an atom. Bromine is a metal. So you add bromine to the vegetable oil, and that makes it break up into smaller droplets and not float to the top, I guess. And it's like a heavy metal, though, like lead. So it does sort of build up in your tissues and perhaps poison you to some extent, like lead in your water.
If you look at the ingredients for soda, they got a whole bunch of chemical in there.
Oh, they totally...
You don't want to eat that.
No, you're right, and that's why all my life, all the wise adults around me told me, don't drink that stuff. That stuff is horrible. You're better off just drinking water, which I think is absolutely true.
They got a bunch of chemicals get out from the petroleum oil.
Oh, yes.
Constant refrain of my childhood. No, it has artificial colors and, yeah.
And it does, and some of that stuff did turn out to be bad, like red dye number 2.
But generally recognized as safe has been a joke for a long time, because
Yeah.
they prove things all the time that aren't, like, for example, was the thalidomide in the 50s or 60s?
Oh, yeah,
was
yeah.
prescribed to women who are pregnant.
Right.
Specifically to try to allay their
Morning sickness, that's right.
And then hundreds of thousands of people, or how many, thousands of people were born without limbs.
Right, so
Like,
that's the
oops.
problem, yep.
Sorry,
That's why.
generally recognized as safe until otherwise proven.
Yep, and that's why if you want the other side, there's a bunch of people freaking out because there are experimental medical treatments in Europe that you can't get in America for like 20 years because it's really hard to get anything approved because they found out approving things in a hurry leads to these disasters. So, it's just, there's quite a struggle there. So anyway, this is an interesting idea. I don't know how true it is, but what they point out is you've got multi-core processors and you have a GPU and you might have a TPU, and they say the current operating systems do not efficiently allocate threads to these different processors. And if you did it more efficiently, you could get twice the result out of the existing processor by breaking your job into threads and allocating it to these different processing units more effectively. So that might be true. Sounds like something. It might turn out to be practical, it might not. It is the job of the OS, and so they're saying the current algorithms used by OS to do this are not right and they should be better, which all sounds reasonable.
It's experimental.
Yeah, but I think the current OSs were all designed basically for single core CPUs and then imperfectly upgraded to multi-core CPUs, and nobody ever thought about using the GPU very much. So I think it's probably true that you could improve the OS's ability to cut the job up. Anyway, let me stop this.